What is it like to be a cyclist with a low FTP? The recent 67-mile ride I did is a good example of the balancing act I have to do on almost every ride. It's always a fine line between riding a sweet spot and finding myself in over-lactate threshold land. This recent 67-mile ride I did, going up Kyle Canyon and then Deer Creek Road to Robber's Roost from my house, is a perfect example of how having a low FTP and not much reserve in terms of heart rate can be a real hindrance and can make a ride that is not that hard for others very, very difficult for me. So difficult for me, in fact, that I couldn't make it to the 35-mile turnaround point that I had planned. Now, in my defense, I do technically have a heart condition that my cardiologist calls sensitive sinus node, which simply means that my heart rate is very responsive to adrenaline, and because of that I have a low reserve between staying at lactate threshold and my maximum heart rate. With a 90% maximum effort, I can typically get to my maximum heart rate in 30 seconds just going up a short, steep hill. It's not a dangerous condition, and my cardiologist tells me that I have a strong heart and he has no problem with my heart rate going into the 180s. I'll just be anaerobic at that point. However, this condition does limit me substantially on long rides with substantial elevation gain and/or a headwind or crosswind. It can be an annoying handicap. I do not take any medications for this or anything else because no matter what medication I take, I pretty much get all the bad side effects. So back to the epic ride that I had envisioned and the ordeal that it really was. The first 12 miles there was minimal climbing, but I usually have to fight a headwind when I'm going north, so I maintained an easy pace until I got to Kyle Canyon Road. So far, only about 400 feet of elevation gain. From US 95 to the Mt Charleston Hotel is about 18 miles with 3,650 feet of elevation gain. It is literally a relentless climb that keeps getting steeper as you go up. At this point, I have been climbing non-stop for 3.5 hours. So now I'm at 27 miles into my ride, and after that 3,650 feet of climbing with no respite, I was at lactate threshold for too long and started hitting the wall. Mile 27 to 33.5 was mostly 7 and 8% gradient, and that put me way over lactate threshold for about 90 minutes. The 90 minutes it took for me to get to 1.5 miles short of my turnaround point. There was no respite on this entire section of the road either. At this point, I had zero gas left in the tank, no energy in the legs. I had consumed much more energy than I usually would on a ride, and all that did was give me an upset stomach. You would probably say that I bonked. I would tell you that I didn't. I probably needed more hydration, however, which is difficult since there is nowhere to get any water for 40 plus miles of this ride through the merciless desert. And the smoke from all the fires burning in the surrounding states probably didn't help either. So I called it at mile 33.5 and turned around, thinking that I should have an easy 25-mile descent. Nope. Now, if dying 1,000 deaths in that 33.5 miles and continuous climbing wasn't bad enough, apparently Mother Nature decided my day wasn't hard enough, so she gave me a headwind or a crosswind all the way back home for the entire 33.5 miles. Where I'd normally be going 43 miles an hour down Deer Creek Road, I was struggling to keep control of the bike at 32 or 33 miles an hour because of the gusty crosswinds. Then, when I was back on Kyle Canyon Road, I had a bad headwind, and that slowed me down about 7 to 10 miles an hour. And by mile 55, I had no energy left because I'd been over lactate threshold for way too long. And to get back down the mountain, I had to produce 150 to 200 watts just to fight the wind on the descent down to US 95. The last 12 miles back home were a real struggle with the headwind and the 100-degree heat. My FTP, according to Garmin, is 207. My average watts for this 5.5 hour ride was 125. Doesn't seem like much, but I'm only 153 pounds and a slender build, so I don't have to produce big watts to get around. My philosophy ever since I started riding road bikes in 2016 was to go as fast as possible while at the same time expending as little energy as possible. Works most of the time until I have to do this sort of an effort. So I think now you may be able to see why a ride like this is such a big task for me. This is the life of having very skinny legs, a sensitive sinus node, and a low FTP. When the gradient is over 5%, life gets very hard. All it takes for me to get to my FTP and to go beyond lactate threshold is a 3% gradient, 10 mile per hour headwind, and trying to maintain like 14-15 miles an hour. However, in spite of all this, I'm currently riding the fastest and strongest I have been riding since I started riding road bikes in 2016. This experience with longer rides of 50 to 70 miles with more than 4,000 feet of climbing has been very consistent, however, no matter how much fuel I consume or how good my form is. I guess maybe I need to stick to the short and hard rides that I usually do, because that way I can stay within the parameters that my body can deal with. You know, sometimes genetics suck, but age is probably also a factor here. I mean, my 54th birthday is in a few weeks, but I see people my age or older doing 100-mile rides with like 7,000 feet of elevation gain, and I'm like physically incapable of doing that. Not because I'm not in good shape, but because of my total ectomorph body type and this cardiovascular handicap that I have. In any case, I did almost accomplish my goal, and that was the objective. I wish I could have made it that last 1.5 miles though, but I just couldn't do any more of that 7 and 8% gradient to get to my original destination. Maybe next time, when there isn't smoke filling the air from fires hundreds of miles away. We'll see. Let me know what you think. Do you experience this problem too? What did you do to get around it, to get stronger? Is there really anything that I can do? Let me know in the comments.